After a tumultuous couple of weeks, the Redskins finally seemed like they were past controversy with the changing of their name. Now, 15 women come out and allege former employees of sexual and verbal harassment while working for the Redskins and Dan Snyder. I'm going to talk about this article that just dropped from the Washington Post. It's really hot-breaking stuff. There's amazing things I shouldn't say amazing, awful things in here, but just shockingly what's going on here. I'm going to talk about this article and talk about the real issues women face in the working in the sports world, especially in the good old boys club in the NFL. But if you could, like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel, I greatly appreciate it. It really helps YouTube know that you guys enjoy my stuff and helps recommend it more when you do that, engage in the channel. So let's get into this. From the Washington Post, more than a dozen women allege sexual harassment and verbal abuse by former Redskins team employees. A few months after Emily Applegate started working for the Washington Redskins in 2014, she settled into her daily routine. She would meet a female coworker in the bathroom during their lunch breaks to commiserate and cry about the frequent sexual harassment and verbal abuse they endured. They cried about the former chief operating officer's expletive-laced tirades when she called him a effing stupid, and then requesting she wear a tight dress for a meeting with clients so the men in the room have something to look at. They cried about a wealthy suite holder who grabbed her friend's backside during a game, Applegate said, and the indifference the team's top sales executive displayed when she complained. But most of all, Applegate said they cried about the realization their dream job of working in the NFL came with what they characterized as relentless sexual harassment and verbal abuse that was ignored, in some cases condoned by top team executives. Applegate is one of 15 former female Redskins employees who told the Washington Post they were sexually harassed during their time at the club. The other 14 women spoke on the condition of anonymity, citing a fear of litigation, and as some had signed non-disclosure agreements with the team that threaten legal retribution if they speak negatively about the club. The team declined a request from the Post to release former female employees from those agreements so they could speak on the record without fear of legal reprisal. The story involved interviews with more than 40 current and former employees and a review of text messages and internal company documents. Team owner Dan Snyder declined several requests for an interview over the past week. You know, this has been a really bad time for Dan Snyder. Everyone talked about the team name getting changed. They finally give it up, and now this drops. And I'm going to just break down what goes on in this article. It's a really long article, and it's just horrifying, some of the stuff that this woman Applegate is talking about. We're talking about Dan Snyder would be berating his employees, making fun of his the suite owner, Dennis Green, because he was a male cheerleader in college. And then that led to Dennis Green taking it out on his female employees. Just massive amounts of verbal and sexual harassment for all the female employees. And this speaks to the larger issue at hand that I feel like most women in sports have to deal with, especially in the NFL, that there is a bullshit male boys club that's just disgusting and gross. Like, women can work in sports too and not be harassed. Like, you're just coworkers, and it really is an unseen side of things that women have to deal with. And it's always good when stuff like this comes out to get the word out there so more and more people are aware of this stuff, and maybe more and more teams look at their internal handlings, because it seems like we have a story like this happen far too often, and I can only imagine the amount of stuff that happens that's not mentioned. But let's see. The allegation raised by Applegate and the others were running from 2006 to 2009, spanned most of Snyder's tenure as the team owner, fall into two categories: unwelcome overtures or comments of sexual nature, and extortions to wear revealing clothing and to flirt with clients to close sales deals. Among those men accused of harassment and verbal abuse are 3 former members of Snyder's inner circle and 2 longtime members of the personnel department. Michael, senior vice president of content and the voice of the Washington Redskins. 7 former employees said Michael routinely discussed the physical appearance of female colleagues in sexual and disparaging overtones. In 2018, Michael was caught on a hot mic speaking about the attractiveness of a college-age intern. According to 6 former employees who heard the recording, Michael declined an interview request and retired Wednesday. So he's out. Obviously, Santos, the club's director of pro personnel, was accused by 6 former employees and 2 reporters who covered the team of making inappropriate remarks about their bodies and asking them if they were romantically interested. Santos was fired. I know he was fired from the team. Talked about a woman from The Ringer who was covering him at the Combine, and he sexually harassed her, also making advancements towards her during the week there. Richard Mann, assistant director of pro personnel, who in one text message obtained by the Post told a female employee he and his colleagues debated whether her breasts had been surgically enhanced, and in another text message told another female employee to expect an inappropriate hug, and don't worry, that will be a stapler in my pocket, nothing else. Mann, who was fired last week, declined to comment. This is just awful, awful stuff. Like, who does, like, what is wrong with you people? What are you doing? I don't understand this. Yes, men and women have their sexual attractiveness and all this stuff. Behave yourself. Like, it's not hard to behave yourself and just see your coworkers as coworkers. And if you're interested in somebody, ask them. If they say no, don't press the issue. Just be like, okay, that's it. There's no harm in asking once. If they decline, be polite about it. Don't take it out on them. It's so unfair for women working in the sports world. Mitch Grisham, former chief operating officer, routinely berated her for trivial problems such as printer malfunctions while also complimenting on her body. 2 other female employees supported Applegate's account of her sexual harassment and verbal abuse by Grisham, who left the team in 2015. It was the most miserable experience of my life. Applegate, now 31, said of her year working as a marketing coordinator for the club, which she left in 2015. And we all tolerated it because we knew if we complained and they reminded us of this, then if we complained, they reminded us of this. There were 1,000 people out there who would take our job in a heartbeat. Gresham said in a phone interview, I barely even remember who she is. I thought the Redskins was a great place to work. I would apologize to anyone who thought I was verbally abusive. No woman accused Snyder or former longtime team president Bruce Allen of inappropriate behavior with women, but they expressed skepticism the men were unaware of the behavior. I would assume Bruce Allen knew because he sat 30 feet away from me and saw me sobbing at my desk several times a week. It's right. Like, how can you not know what's going on in your team? Especially for these guys, Snyder, who is constantly there, and they said, and constantly dealing with his staff, and these guys are high up in the inner circle. He knows what's going on. And it plays into the thing that Snyder's a shit owner. I've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks, how bad of an owner it comes off that Snyder is. And this is very explosive stuff. Now, there's some stupid rumors going around that Jeff Bezos put this article together because he owns the Washington Post because he wants to force Dan Snyder out so he can buy the Redskins. I don't buy it because there's way too much backing this up. Now, who knows what billionaire motivations are on top of things. But I'm not sure if this is going to force Snyder out because he's not directly involved. Kind of like Mark Cuban just fostered an environment of sexual harassment and abusive behavior towards female employees. Let's see, another woman. I've never been in a more hostile, manipulative, passive-aggressive environment, and I worked in politics. Julia Payne, former assistant press secretary in the Clinton administration, who briefly served as vice president of communications for the teams in 2003. Payne did not witness or endure sexual harassment, she said, but she supported what many other former employees said about the culture under Dan Snyder. With such a toxic, mood-driven environment and the owner behaving like he does, said Payne, how could anyone think these women would go to HR? So they talk about unwelcome advances from people in HR, not people in HR. You couldn't go to HR. Unwelcome advances from these members of the staff. Lean in to get a better angle. Talked about to avoid going to the tobacco company, a prominent bar and restaurant in Richmond for a training camp because it would be frequented by team officials. Let's see this quote. I was propositioned basically every day at training camp, said one female employee who worked for the team in the mid-2000s for several years. The overtures came in the form of a whisper invitation from one coach at the tobacco company to his hotel room, she said, as well as emails and text messages from other male staffers, also disclosing their room numbers and offering invitations for late-night visits. Attending the annual NFL Combine in Indianapolis, former female employees said, likelihood of unwanted attention at places such as Prime 47, a steakhouse and bar with league officials and journalists. This woman talks about Santos, who approached her in 2019 at the Combine at Prime 47. He was talking about how he has a wife and girlfriend, showing pictures of them. Just really awful, awful stuff here. You can't even fathom some of these things. Santos was fired last week. The Post was informed of by because he was erased of allegations raised by other former female staffers. One female staffer said she received a text one night after work in which Santos told her he had wanted to kiss her that day in the break room. Another former female employee said Santos told her she was walking into the office one day and she had a nice butt and asked her to turn around for him. I'm done with the NFL, the woman said. Her experience with the Redskins has killed any dream of her career in pro sports. There's a breakdown of these text messages here. Can't really read them. It's just awful, awful stuff. Santos was fired along with top scouting assistant Richard Mann, who sent flirtatious sexual texts to two female employees they provided to the Post about getting an inappropriate hug. If I bring that, I want to squeeze your butt, Mann texted. Unfortunately, that's what the culture is, the woman said. Ron Rivera says, we're trying to create a new culture here. We're hoping to get people to understand that they need to judge us on where we are and where we're going as opposed to where we've been. That's really important. I think Ron Rivera is a perfect guy for this, to change the culture of this garbage, absolute garbage that's going on in the Redskins. The voice of the Redskins, Larry Michaels, perhaps one of the more consistent aspects of the franchise, marked by regular personnel turnover. He was the play-by-play broadcaster for the past 16 years. Talks about he was always objectifying and derogatory towards female staffers. Saw one woman walking in and said she had a tight ass beforehand. He said you can't mess with her, though, because she's effing every guy on the team, said the staffer, who afterward mentioned the comment to colleagues. I was mortified but not surprised, the female employee said. Years earlier, Michael had squeezed the woman on her face after a late night of taping a team program and told her she was so cute. It's just awful. They're not going to get rid of the voice of the Redskins over a $30,000 a year marketing manager, one former male staffer said. I'm almost at a loss for words, the stuff that's coming out of this. Clearly, it's a awful and toxic culture that Dan Snyder has provided for the Redskins. This is going on all over the place. It talks about the volatile environment, about, who is this, Mitch Gresham, who would blow out on Applegate and talk about how she's terrible and she can't do anything right, but then, oh, did you run a little extra? You look really good. Talking about no part of it, no worries, go find a dude, after asking about an upcoming sales meeting. Here's the text talking about that. Dennis Green, other team reportedly commented on Applegate's appearance. Dennis Green, who held a high-pressure job of luxury seating and premium seats. On one occasion, Applegate said Green complimented her on her leggings she was wearing. He made a comment about how great I looked in these leggings because they were so tight. That was actually the only time Mitch said something like that. Dennis, you can't say something like that. Women who work for Green hold conflicting feelings about the former boss because they acknowledge he made inappropriate remarks and pressured them to wear revealing outfits to flirt with current and prospective suite holders. They were also aware of the tremendous pressure Green faced from Snyder because of the product on the field was crap and he had to sell these luxury suites. And Snyder would, quote, humiliate Dennis in front of other executives because he was a cheerleader in college. And Dennis took everything. He did everything and anything he had to make sure those suites were sold out year after year, one former saleswoman said. So it's tough. It's tough. Again, he does inappropriate stuff, but it's just a toxic culture because it starts from the owner setting this tone and berating him because he was a cheerleader in college. Who cares? Like what? Reducing a young woman to thinking she can only do her job well if she only wears a certain thing to expose part of her body is demeaning. This former saleswoman, it puts a woman in her place. Retribution concerns. Applegate talks about she received messages if she's worried about retribution. She says, I don't see why. I've told the truth. And here's the one good person, but people are going to say he's not a good person. I don't know. In 2015, Applegate said she was pulled aside by Eric Schaefer, the club's general counsel and senior vice president, who left earlier this year. Schaefer was appalled by the verbal abuse Applegate endured from Gresham. She said he told her he offered to serve as a witness or connect her with a lawyer if she wanted to file a formal complaint. Applegate declined, and she said she feared making an issue of Gresham's conduct would mark the end of her career with the team. Applegate regards Schaefer as one of the few male team executives who treated her well. Some of her former colleagues, however, expressed outrage that Schaefer didn't file a complaint of his own. According to the employee manual, All supervisory and management positions of the Redskins organized are expected to take immediate and inappropriate action to prevent or stop harassment in the workplace, which they become aware. Schaefer declined to comment. Applegate said she understands why he didn't make an issue of the treatment in 2015. It's the same reason she never filed a complaint. I needed to keep my job, she said. When it comes down to it, 98% of people make decisions on stuff like that. This based on needing to keep their jobs, and which is why this stuff goes on for so long. And seriously, any women out there, if you're dealing with this stuff in the workplace, especially those in sports, say something. Please say something. We can't foster this type of environment in the workplace for men and women. There's always going to be certain issues, tensions, that's just human nature and stuff like that. But we can't be gross to each other, especially if it's unwanted. It's really that simple. It goes above and beyond the stuff that these people are doing than just being a little flirtatious with somebody at work, or asking somebody out once and not, pestering them or holding them, accountable for saying no. It's really, really tough. And like I said, I don't know. Dan Snyder, you have to know this is going on. I don't know if this is going to force him to sell the team and get forced out by league ownerships, the ownership commission and the commissioner. But all this stuff is just really, really awful. Hopefully this inspires more people to come out and say something if it's going on in other organizations, which I'm sure it is. And it brings to light the issues women deal with in the sports world. Because I know a lot of women in the sports world, and I'm sure they've felt uncomfortable and inappropriate, and men too. It's not just women. I'm sure there's men who have felt inappropriate with powerful women in organizations or other powerful men in the organizations that abuse their power and degrade them, verbally abuse them, sexually harass them. It's the larger issue at hand, and hopefully at 2020 we're moving past all this stuff. But if you can, share this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.